this, nothing about any of this is without deep strategy, we can imagine, from the attorneys involved. So
Right.
what would have been Tony Buzbee's strategy in terms of his approach of this witness?
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, I think I would say that obviously these are some of the greatest lawyers in Texas. And so you're going to get a lot of showmanship from both sides. And I think we saw that today from both sides. But definitely Busby shined, I think, the most with the showmanship. I mean, I think his angle is going back to the theme that they did in their openings. I was there in person. I saw their openings. And Cogdill said that it was all assumptions and assumptions and assumptions that Mr. Mateer made all these assumptions that led to this decision to go forward. And that's typical defense work, right? You take the big picture and you pull every little piece apart, you examine every little piece and create doubt about as many of those little pieces along the way as you can. And I think that's what Buzbee was trying to do, is every little thing that happened was an assumption that led to another thing that didn't have enough evidence behind it for them to go forward the way that they did to the FBI. And I think that's the theme of what they're trying to demonstrate. I think that's what Buzbee tried to get out of Mateer today.
And it seemed like one of the things that Tony Buzbee was attempting to do was really attempt to discredit Jeff Mateer, or if not wholly discredit, at least poke enough holes in his story to raise some level of doubt about his credibility. Is that common? I mean, is that essentially what attorneys do in a situation like this? Is that a common cross-examination technique?
Well, and Brad touched on it a little bit, but I actually, Tony, want to take a step back because, yes, that is a common technique by defense attorneys to discredit the witness because they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. But the difference between that and normal trials, Tony, must be explored. And that is this. All of our trials that we embark of, we are seeking to seek out impartial jurors. This impeachment trial is so unique and they're so rare that all the jurors have some kind of partiality. So, yes, even though Mr. Buzbee is doing what he needs to do to try to discredit this witness, you are essentially dealing at this point with 30 partial witnesses. Now, we don't know where their partialities lies or how they're receiving this evidence, but Mr. Buzbee's trying to attack the credibility of these witnesses while appealing to 30 jurors who have some partiality. Now, their oath to the Constitution says they have to set it aside and judge solely by the facts that they see. And that is what Mr. Buzbee is attempting to do by discrediting Mr. Mateer. But at the flip side, the prosecution through Mr. Dick Guerin is trying to solidify the credibility of not only Mr. Mateer, but also through Mr. Baggert by saying it wasn't just one employee within the office that had concerns. It was multiple employees. So whatever little discrediting that you feel Mr. Buzbee did, it wasn't just Mr. Mateer himself that had an issue. It was multiple individuals, and that's why this conduct was illegal, or that's why they sought out the FBI to investigate this conduct.
As Brad, I want to get to the substance of Jeff Mateer's testimony. I was struck by this sort of chaotic atmosphere that he presented within the Attorney General's office. Is he being blackmailed? What in the world is going on? What did you think about the substance of his testimony?
Sure, and I think his response is kind of attack the defense's case, right? The defense is trying to say that $25,000 was the campaign contribution, and so for $25,000, why on earth would Mr. Paxton do all these things? And I think that the House committee and Mateer are saying, well, that's exactly what we're asking. Like, that's not a lot of money. So why is he doing it? And everything points to the relationships between Mr. Paul and the relationships with the extramarital situation. So I think that's what they're seeing. They saw all of this mess and realized that there's more there to it. And so they really dug in and wanted to know more. And that's why they went to the FBI about it.
Certainly much of the testimony from both Mateer and Baggert were more fact-driven, but there were moments in time when emotion really sort of showed through. Mateer testifying to the fact that this phone call that he had with Ken Paxton, in which he believed maybe Ken Paxton was intoxicated, that he was deeply troubled and disturbed by that phone call. And Mateer, he didn't use the word betray, but he felt as though he was seeing inside of a person that he at that point no longer knew. Mark, with regard to bringing in sort of those more emotional aspects, how important is that to the overall picture here?
It does bring kind of credibility toward the witness. Number one, because you see the insight with the internal conflict. Being a prosecutor, swearing an oath, not only to the Constitution, but to the boss that gave you that privilege to serve the citizens, whether it be a county or state. That oath is taken seriously. And when you have these concerns by these assistants or deputies, it really is a conflict within themselves to determine this person that I swore my allegiance to serve the people of Texas. And now I'm having conflicts of what they're telling me to do, what I believe is right to do in seeking justice, which is what my role is as an attorney general, assistant attorney general. Those kind of conflicts within can tear you up, cause all kinds of stress. And you see that come out on the witness stand because they ultimately made that tough decision that this person who I swore allegiance to that hired me, I now have to go turn them in. And you see that outpouring while they testify. And that can only do nothing but help their credibility in the conflict that they had in what forced them to ultimately come forward.
Yeah, Claire, what is your take on that? Those more emotional moments and that landing in a different kind of way than this happened on this date at this time with the jurors, the senators in this case.
Well, I hope that it landed in the appropriate way, because when you when you work for a public office, your boss, your leader has sworn an oath of office, and you as their deputies or their assistants are also taking an oath. You go before a judge and you raise your right hand and you swear out an oath to serve the citizens of Texas. And you have to believe in the leadership that you are serving. And there are moments, and Mark has done the job of assistant district attorney, and I have done the job of assistant district attorney, and we look up to our elected officers, and we know that the office is only as good and only has the integrity and can only serve as far and as nobly as the people at the helm of it. And if you lose the confidence in the leadership that has been entrusted to that individual, it's very hard to go on and go to work every day and keep doing your job. And that's how it's supposed to be. And so to see those men, to see the struggle happening inside of them when you could see that they had been coming to a reckoning within themselves, I believe gave so much truth and credibility to their testimony. It became easy to see why they had to go. They had to come together and make a decision about whether to go forward. But you could also see how it tore them up to have to do that, and how hard it must have been to see someone that they had allowed to lead them, to feel betrayed by that.